everybody, Larry Vinson here with The Bridge HC Online. Glad you could join us today. You know, humans are natural wanderers, right? Not wanderers, but wanderers with an A, right? Recent research suggests that for 99% of our time here on Earth, we have had nomadic type tendencies. So it makes sense then, doesn't it? That there are times when things go wrong or become stale, or even when we feel like we've learned all that we can, wherever we may be at, that we get this itch to move on to greener pastures. And if you have been in the church for even a little bit of time, you know that this rings true for people in the church. But when someone feels as if their time is up, or they can no longer justify their reason for staying at church, they get that itch. They get that itch to move on to greener pastures. And for a growing number of Americans, that means leaving the church for good. But if they don't leave, if they don't scratch that itch, then those who were once passionate followers of Jesus Christ, who gave everything they had to the church and the gospel, they become people who go through the motions of religion, but have turned their heart off to God and to those around them. Today, we start a series of conversations that I'm calling Walking the Path. And I want us all to see the path that God has for each and every one of us. But in order for that to happen, we have to take stock. We have to take stock in where we are at right now. We have to be able to take an honest look as to where we are on the path, if we're even on the path at all. Because the truth is, most of us are wanderers, just trying to either find the path or learn how to stay on it. Now, for those of us who are off the path, this conversation today is for you, because my hope is that today's conversation will be a blessing. Here's how we're going to break it down. In our first section together, we're going to look at those who have knowingly and willingly walked away from God's path. And in our second section, we're going to take a look at those who have no idea that they've walked away, primarily because they think they're still on the path. And then finally, section 3, we're going to finish by talking about what we can do if we ever choose to get back on that path. All right, and I want to make something clear right out of the bat. You know, I'm not going to sit here and try to pressure, guilt you, or manipulate you into getting back into a relationship with God, or as we call it, getting back on God's path. We're not gonna try to do that in a way that is manipulative or guilting you in any way. We want you to be able to figure out where you're at, take stock in where you're at, and then make a decision, an honest decision as to where you want to go from here. Okay, so let's talk about this in the way that we framed it, by starting with those who literally walked away. And we're going to start this off by looking at Luke chapter 15. And each and every week, we're going to be looking at the story of the prodigal son, and then we're also going to take a look at the parable of the sowers. And we're going to change those stories out every week, and then we're going to finally have both stories, talked through and discussed by the time we finish this whole series. Okay, so we're only going to deal with just a few verses today from the prodigal son, and we're going to start in verse 11 of chapter 15. Luke 15, verse 11. Here's what Luke writes. He says, "There was a man who had 2 sons." This is Jesus speaking. "The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had. He set off for a distant country and there squandered his wealth in wild living." So it's pretty cut and dry, right? The son walks in, younger son walks in, demands what he believes is owed to him, and once he gets it, just jets. It doesn't really tell us much more than that, and I wish it had, because there is one thing that I wish would have been revealed at the very beginning of the story. And that's why the son demanded the money in the first place. You ever thought about that? What made this kid come up to his dad and say, I demand that you give me what I believe is owed to me? But we'll never know that answer. Now, look, people walk away from God and from the church all the time, and for various reasons. But just as it wasn't revealed in our text, the reason as to why people leave, while valid, I will never try to invalidate the reason why someone leaves God or the church. But the reason, like it was in the story, it just isn't necessary for us to know. Now, we are happy to learn it. We are happy to hear that. But we shouldn't go digging for the answer unless it's voluntarily given. You know, side note, I get this, but we have to allow people the freedom to choose how to tell their story and when and if. Because they may never feel comfortable sharing that part of themselves, and that's okay. But here is what is necessary for us to know. God loves us enough, and so much, that he allows us the freedom to choose to stay or to leave. It's just like how Joshua puts it in the book of Joshua, chapter 24. He says, if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. You see, the key word there is choose. God allows us the choice to choose whether or not we will stay or if we will go. Even though, and this is clear, even though God's preference is for us to stay. He says it just as plainly in 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 9, the Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. Now, back to our story, because, perhaps the son thought he would always have enough money, right? Maybe the son thought he was going to be successful, right? Maybe the son thought he could do this on his own, kind of like how we do when we decide to abandon faith or to reject God or to leave the church. We think we don't need this, we can just do it on our own. Maybe the son thought the same thing. Maybe the son didn't think he needed his family anymore. But the point that Jesus makes in these few short verses is that the actions of the son were selfish. And that's why he uses the word squandered in the text. That word squandered literally means to scatter. It means to throw money around in a wasteful manner. Now, while it is our choice as to what we do, those who walk away from God need to know that they are squandering an amazing opportunity to be a part of God's family and to share in a relationship with Jesus Christ. And sometimes, even though we have the freedom to do so, leaving to do things on our own maybe isn't the path that God wants us to walk on. That's where I want you to hang on for a moment. That thought of leaving to do things on our own isn't the path that God wants us to walk. I want you to hold on to that thought as we enter into our first set of discussion questions, okay? As always, you don't have to answer all three of these. Choose one or all of them if you want, and discuss these in as much detail as you can. Question number one is this: why does God give us the freedom to choose if we will stay in relationship with him or leave? If you were God, if you had the ability to do what God does, would you give people the same freedom. And can you think of other scriptures that show God giving people the choice of staying or leaving? And then number 2, what reasons can you give for people either abandoning their faith or leaving the church? If you have a personal example or of you or someone you know abandoning or leaving, please tell your story if you are comfortable. That's the key. If you're not comfortable telling it, leave it. Just skip over that part, okay? And are there logical reasons for people taking extreme measures against God and the church? And then finally, question number 3, do those who walk away from God end up harming themselves and those around them? How do we explain those who are able to find health and healing after leaving the faith? Can a person who left their faith find healing in returning to God? All right, answer either one or all 3 of these questions. Take about 10 to 15 minutes to do so. And when you are ready, come back here, push play, and I'll be waiting for you. Hey guys, welcome back. As we just talked about, there are people who have literally walked away from God. And while the reasons aren't really important for us to know unless shared by the other, the consequences are. There are tons of religious leaders lately, songwriters, Christian songwriters, and pastors who are deconstructing. And not in the way that we've talked about in the series that we did a few months ago, which is still on YouTube if you're wanting to watch that. But the way that people are deconstructing is that they're not just breaking apart their faith, they're destroying it. And in the wake of that are doing so much damage to those that looked to them for spiritual guidance and instruction. Now, this isn't to, again, guilt those who have left the church. I'm just pointing out that the genuine consequence isn't just to impact the person alone. When people leave the church, when people leave the family of God, when they leave people for whom they have loved, a lot of damage is done, and there's a ripple effect. But just as much damage is done when people stay, even though in their mind and in their heart, they've left the church a while ago. There are people who figuratively have walked away. This is what the role of the older brother plays in the story of the prodigal son. In Luke chapter 15, verse 25, we hear after the brother has already come back home, spoiler alert if you've never read it before, the prodigal does come back home. And when the brother comes back home, his dad throws a party. Okay, and so we pick up the story when the brother finds out in verse 25. Here's what Luke writes. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field, and when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. Well, your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. Now, the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him? Here's the deal. The brother was angry. Obviously. The oldest son was livid. And most people, if we just take a second to think about it in a logical sense, most people would have understood the brother's anger. And put in his shoes, we might have been just as angry. But hear this out. Just because we understand why the brother got angry, it doesn't mean the brother had a right to be angry. He should have been as ecstatic as the servants, or even as happy as his father that his brother had come back safe and sound. But he wasn't. In the brother's eyes, the younger son, his brother, was dead and had no right to be brought back in the family. He had no right to be called a son again. And in that moment, in that very moment, the older brother's heart turned cold towards the one his father was thrilled to welcome back. Now hear this. Heartless living is just as bad as selfish living. True, the younger son left. He left on his own accord. He wasn't kicked out, wasn't coerced, none of that. He left. He turned his back on his family. But so did the older son. He just stayed and worked while doing it. He didn't just show it until the younger son came back and tried to get back in good with the dad. At least from the older brother's perspective, that's what was going on. We know that it's completely different, and the facts of the case we'll talk about in a different week. But the older son thought he was just trying to guilt and weasel his way back into the family, and that was unfair to the older son. And we might be sitting here and like, yeah, it's unfair. This kid's been working his tail off, and the younger brother comes in and just steals all the glory and the attention. Well, regardless of supposed fairness, we are called to rejoice when someone comes back into the family of God. Now, that doesn't negate whatever future consequences might occur as a result of being gone all that time. That might not negate the consequence of the fact that this kid will probably not get his inheritance back in a practical and physical and worldly sense now that he's back with his family. We don't know what this dynamic is going to look like, and in truth be told, Jesus doesn't get into it because that's not really the point of the story. The point is that this older brother had an issue. And regardless of whether it was fair or not, his attitude sucked. Because in verse 30, the real issue that the older brother had comes into light. It's not that he didn't get a celebration. He didn't care. I truly believe that he did not expect it. Because that's just not what his culture did. So it's not that the older son didn't get a celebration. It was that the younger one did get a celebration. The older son was upset because his brother, the one who squandered and wasted the inheritance on prostitutes and another wild living, was celebrated just because he came back home. The older brother didn't feel like the younger brother had done enough to earn his place back in the family. So to throw a party in the younger son's honor was, in my opinion, a direct slap in the face. He was the one who had worked his tail off, the older brother, for his dad, and the one who wasted his life, the younger brother, gets celebrated. But this was to prove a spiritual point. This is why Jesus tells this story. So what's the spiritual point here? As the older brother, as the ones who stick around, our works of faithfulness do not make us better than the ones who come back and receive grace. All have an equal opportunity to be in relationship with Jesus. It doesn't matter who we are, it doesn't matter how good we are, it doesn't matter what kind of background we come from or what we did prior to coming to the house. Every one of us have an equal opportunity to be in relationship with Jesus. Now, the older son felt he deserved some acknowledgement for doing the right thing this entire time. He was like, Dad, you could have given me a goat and I wouldn't have cared. He stayed. He worked. He was obedient, which, by the way, I have to say, I have to think that he was exaggerating a little bit, if not lying to his dad, because I don't know about you, but I have never met a child who has always been obedient, right? Now, he claims it, and we'll go with it, but like, not even the best of kids are 100% obedient. But that was his argument. And he believed that because of his obedience, that he should have been acknowledged some way, somehow. At least, compared to what his brother did. But here's the thing, man. Christians aren't supposed to work for a pat on the back. Yeah, it would be nice. Yeah, it would be great if we got what we thought we owed. Or thought was owed to us. But we don't do what God asks us to do for our benefit or for his praise. No, we work. We work because that's what we're supposed to do. We put everything we have into sharing God's love and being obedient to do what he asks us to do. Not because we have to. Get this right. Not because we have to, but because we are passionately in love with Jesus. That's why we do what we do. That's why the bridge started. That's why we are doing the things that we are doing in the way that we are doing them. Not because we feel like this is the best way, not because we feel like this is the easy way, because it's certainly not, but because we are passionately head over heels in love with Jesus Christ and will do anything he asks us to do. And it's because we are grateful for what he has done. What he has done, what he will do and is doing through the Spirit that lives within each and every one of us. Hang on to that thought as we head into our second set of discussion questions. Question number 1. Do you agree with the assertion that heartless living is just as bad as selfish living? And can you think of personal or cultural or biblical examples that would prove your point? Question number 2. Is it easy for you to accept or rejoice when a person who has done awful things comes back into the family of God? And what does accepting a person look like from your perspective? And then finally, question number 3, is the response of the older brother common in the church today? And do Christians tend to be heartless when a person with a troubled past comes into the church? Take some time to explain your answer. All right, go ahead and push pause here in just a moment. Take about 10 to 15 minutes to answer either one or all 3 of these questions. And when you're ready, come on back, push play, and I will be waiting here for you. Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you had a really good conversation because here's the truth. There are people who refuse to leave the church physically, but if they were to search deep enough, they would see that they left a long time ago. And it reminds me of pastors who spend a lifetime going through the motions, but emotionally, themselves, they left a long time ago. There is this organization called the Christian Project, or the Clergy Project, that exists to help people, pastors specifically, who have either given up their faith, who have turned to atheism and agnosticism to find a different career that suits them better practically, right? But it also helps those pastors who have turned to atheism and agnosticism but have yet to leave the church. And out of their 830 current members, according to their website, 35% are still active as pastors while hiding their atheism and agnosticism. And for whatever reasons, again, not for us to know. But these are the people, and people like them who may not be pastors, who exist within the church, who have walked away emotionally, mentally, internally, but are still there physically, going through the motions. And so as we talk about our response, the only thing we can say is that it's important for us to realize that when it comes to people walking off the path, whether they walked off physically or emotionally, is that the response matters. Our response matters. And so I want to turn to one particular response, actually shown in two separate verses in the text that we've already read. All right? Luke chapter 15, verse 12, and also Luke 15, verse 28. Here's what verse 12 says. So the father divided his property between the older brother and the younger one. And then Luke 15, verse 28. So the older brother's father went out and pleaded with him. No matter how someone walks off the path, we need to respond. More important than the actions of the brothers was the actions of the father. And Luke makes sure that we see the importance of this response through one single word. And it's the same word that I highlighted there on the text. And that's the word so. So. Such a small word, but yet has a large impact because it means that the father didn't ignore his sons. No, he responded to them. This is how I know that I can never be God, because I would never be that kind of a father. I would know that if my youngest son, who is currently 6 years old, so it would be quite a surprise, but let's say my youngest son comes up to me and says to me, Dad, you need to give me my money because I am owed that money. I would first have to laugh, hysterically laugh. And then it's like, oh, I'll give you what you're owed. It might be a timeout in the wall, but I'm definitely going to give you what you are owed, right? Or let's say my oldest son, who is 17 years old, comes up to me and says, Dad, why are you showing so much grace to, this younger kid? Why do I have to, work my tail off and never get acknowledged? If he was out there crying because I gave my son a Switch and decided not to give my oldest son one, I heard he was outside crying, I'd be like, dude, boo-hoo all you want. It ain't going to change what I did. And I just leave him out there. But that's not what the good father does in the story of the prodigal son. Because no, the good father shows. He shows his love by responding. God doesn't just say he loves us. He proves it. He proves it by allowing us to make our own choices, by allowing us the opportunity to express our own feelings. And throughout it all, he never once forces a decision. He never tells his son, suck it up and get inside. Nor does he tell his younger son, who are you to demand anything from me? No, he listens. He allows. He gave his younger son what he demanded. And he allowed his oldest son the opportunity to vent. So the solution for us, when we approach somebody who has either physically left the church or God, like the younger son did, or if it's the older son who stayed and yet left in a very different, closed-off, emotional type of way, the solution is to be neither the younger or older brother. No, the solution is to be the father. Specifically, to be a loving father who allows others to respond naturally, and that's a key word there, naturally, to the invitation we offer to be a part of God. And that natural response may be for them to say, you know what, I'm good, I'm going to stay out here. That might be the response. But we always have to love, because love is the beacon that brings us back home. But it's not something we force. No, it's something we show. When we give someone the space to explore their faith on their own, that's showing that person love. When we offer an ear for someone to vent, that is showing love. So specifically, practically, what can we do today? How do we show this love? Well, it means that for the one who leaves, we love them in hopes that they return again by being their friend, by staying in relationship, by being in their family each and every day, regardless if they ever come back or not. To help them work through the pain that is being experienced through walking away, and to work through our own pain. That's that ripple effect of them leaving and walking away. Because if we truly care about them, it's going to hurt when they walk away. But we also have to love the one who stays, right? We have to love the one who has walked away emotionally, who has become cold-hearted to those who have come back to the church. And we have to teach them to reignite their love for all of God's people. You know, to be the example of love that they need to see in hopes that they can change. To be a listening ear and also a guiding tongue so they can see the danger of turning their hearts off towards those who walk away. Because a lot of people who see that in the church have turned their hearts off towards them as well. So in essence, what I'm saying is that to be the father is to be not the older son or the younger son, but to be the son. To be Jesus. To be what Jesus was for us, is for us, and will always be for us. So that leads us into our third and final discussion questions of the night. Take 10 or 15 minutes to answer either one or all three of these, okay? And after I'm done reading, you can hit pause and discuss this on your own or within a group. Question number 1. It has been suggested that when someone walks away from God, that a response is required. Do you agree with this statement? And what role, if any, does silence play in our response? Question number 2. How do you respond, or have you responded, to those who have walked away, either literally or figuratively? And how can you respond better? And then finally, question 3. What is the difference between forcing love and showing love? How well or poorly does the church do at showing love to those who have walked away? All right, go ahead and hit pause. And when you're ready, come on back. I'll be waiting here for you. Hey guys, look, how we interact with those who are walking off the path matters, whether they know they're off the path or not. We need to show love to those outside of the church, to those who have walked away, to those who are trying to recover from the trauma that they went through. We need to give them and allow them the space that they are asking for so that they can figure things out for themselves. But we also need to make sure that we are there for them with open arms if they ever want to come back or if they just simply want to talk. You know, we also need to show love to those inside the church, to those who have become cold-hearted to the love that God offers to everyone. We need to be able to remind them of who God is and what he has done for all of us by being God for them, by loving them, by showing them the same love that we hope they show to those who require a ton of grace, because we all require a ton of grace. We need to be able to show them the same love that God shows us through Jesus. And we need to be Jesus. No matter where they are, no matter how close a person is to the path that God has set for them, because I believe that God sets a path for every one of us. And that's why we're talking about the path in this conversational series, because whether we're off the path or on the path, God has a path. But no matter where we're at, we need to understand that God is there. And that leads us to our one thing. The one thing I want you to think about. The one thing I want you to pray about if that's what you're going to be doing. Or the one thing I want you to discuss with those that you care about the most. No matter where, God is there. Whether that be physically away from the church, spiritually absent, or on the path that He has set for us, God is there. He is there to show us His unconditional, unwavering love. He is there to remind us of what we once had. That relationship that was so good that we couldn't imagine life without it. And if we'll have it, if we want it, if it's our choice, He will be there to guide us back. Now, next week, we're going to continue this conversation on walking away from God by discussing those of us or those close to us who have completely closed themselves off to God. We'll do that through the example or through the parable of the sower. The sower, all right? I hope that not only did you find comfort in the conversation today, but that you will find comfort in that conversation as well. But if you are, if you've listened to all of this and you're thinking to yourself, man, I need to make things right. I need to get back on this path, or at least I need someone to talk to who can listen to my story and hear my hurt without fear of judgment or coercion or a guilt trip. Then reach out to us. We can offer that place for you. We can be that safe space. We can be whatever you need in this moment. You can reach out to us through our socials right there on the screen. You can email me personally and set up a time between me and you, either on Zoom or in person to meet. And you can even join us next Tuesday. We meet each and every week at Tri-West Middle School in Lisden, Indiana. And we have these conversations, not as one large group, but at separate tables of about 4 to 5 people. You can have these conversations with people about how you feel about the things that you are hearing. We would love to have you. If you have been blessed by this, if you have gotten some out of this, I'm just going to encourage you as well to donate to what God is doing through the Bridge HC, because we could use the help. I'm not going to lie. So if you would like to donate one time or even a regular gift, you can go to donate.thebridgehc.org and you can create an account and start giving through there. We would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, that will do it for me. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Until next week, as always, peace, love, and soul.